Welcome for another part of the modular inventory tutorial series. And now we are at part 5. And in this one, we'll look at the item rarity. We'll have some rarity for the items. The items can be magic, rare, or unique. So here we have a lifeblood helmet, magic headpiece, and plus 40 life points. All right, we have a razor sharp t-shirt, magic armor, and then we have a rare shield, so it's a rare offhand, and the magic item can generate with 1 or 2 affix. So this one, the affix is razor sharp, the helmet, the affix is lifeblood, and the rare items will generate between 3 and 5, but that's up to you. You can change all of this. This has the minimum affix number, so audio visual thing, the name are random. If it's a magic item, it's going to be the name of the item with a prefix and or suffix. You can also make any other item use the rarity system. So here the crystal are a rare material. The other, like the stone bricks, gold coin, are normal material. There's also a unique item that we're going to add. I will also add at the end a new chest. So you can loot infinitely some items. So just open this one a few times. Prevailing t-shirt of vainglory. So this one has a prefix and a suffix, and one of those has 2 stats on it. So I think prevailing adds life point and vainglory adds luck and intelligence. So I can equip that, and if I open again, it will give me another item. So I can look around. A deadly weapon, a rare weapon. That one has a lot. Sustaining wooden sword. Alright, so let's start adding those rarities. Alright, so I'll start from where we left off in the part 4. I'm simply going to start by adding the data for the affixes for the items. So I'm going to go in my item folder, data, and those are the old data. I can remove them. We won't use those items anymore. And if I right click, open in file manager, and then I can add a new file, and I'm going to call that affixes.json. Are you sure? Yes. Let's open this one. So in the affixes file, I added the base structure of the data that we're gonna have. So each of them will be in groups. This one would be the affixes for damage. This is only the name that you give them. It can be anything, but this one is just to remind me that this one will add damage, but you could add multiple stats, so that's up to you. Then inside, we have the type of the affix. So this one will be a prefix. It will go before the name, and the other one is the suffix, so it will go after. A magic item can only have 1 prefix and 1 suffix, and the rare can have up to 5, but it's going to be shared between both. So you can have 2 prefix and 3 suffix. And you have to make sure that you have enough group to supply 5 affixes. You should have at least 3 prefix and 3 suffixes. Then the apply to, it's only to know on which equipment type this affix can be applied to. I apply it to everything, but you can choose which one. Maybe a ring will have some magic properties, and weapon will have more damage. Armor could have more life and toughness. And then the other part is the affixes. And this one is simply a bunch of groups. It's kind of tiered. So this would be the first tier. We give them a name. So unblemished and the affix name. This is going to be added to the item name. So unblemished, polished. So maybe polished sword. The stat range is the same as the item. So if I go in my item file, this is the item data that we made in another part. So like here, the t-shirt, the base stat is a stat range. So the stat is defense from 1 to 2. So that's the same thing here. Unblemished, the minimum level to get this one is 1. So if you loot an item, level 1, you can only get unblemished. If your item is over or equal to level 8, then it can get polished, but it can also get unblemished. So higher level you can get higher tiered affixes, but you can also get the bad one. You could set a max level so you can get the low one, but it kind of also adds to the rarity of the item. So if you get a polished shield, then it's pretty good because it could have been unblemished. And those you can add as many as you want, and you could also add more data in there. So that's the basic of this. I'm gonna import a bunch of data already made. I have my damage, unblemished, polished, then I'm going to sharp, razor sharp, and this one is minimum level 25. And I have a bigger range, but yeah, that's up to your game. Then I have a affix for vitality that will add vitality. That's pretty much it. I have life point. This one goes high. Yeah, and now I have some suffix. So I have strength. This one will go after the name of the item, so of power. So I could get a unblemished shield of power. Luck is different, just a bit. It's a suffix. It applies to everything. Past level 31, you get 2 stats instead of simply 1. You'll get luck and also intelligence. The scale of the range that you'll get will be applied to both. So if you roll a 0, you'll get the minimum 10 on both stats, plus 10 to luck and plus 10 to intelligence. If you're lucky and roll a 1, then you'll get 15 on both. And we have experience, which is a suffix too, and that's pretty much it. So let's go back in Godot. We'll create the resource script for all of this data. So I'll go in the item folder and I'll start creating new scripts. So new script. Let's start with the first one, affix. And let's create that and open the script. We'll extend resource, class name, affix. All right, let's clear everything. This one is kind of the basic one. This will be the affix itself with the stat range. So what we need is the ID. This is going to be a string. Then we need the affix name, which is a string too. We need an array of stat range because we can have multiple var stat ranges, which is an array. And the last thing is the minimum level. So var min level, which is an int. And the only function that we'll have here is the initialize function. So function init. And in here I'll have the affix ID with the data. And this data will be one affix from the file, like unblemished was a affix. So I'll get the data from this. So ID is equal to affix ID. The affix name will be equal to data.affix name. The minimum level will also be equal to the data.min level. Pretty simple. We need all the stat ranges. So let's initialize the stat range. Stat ranges is equal to an empty array for each stat range data in the data.stat range. So this stat range data will be one stat range from the array. So for example, the unblemished, that would be all the affixes in there. And since there's only one, it's going to be the damage one. For each of them, we'll add them to the stat range. Stat ranges dot append, and we'll add a new stat range. Stat range dot new. That one we already have it. And stat range data. Save that. That's pretty much it for the affix. Because if we go in stat range, this one in its initialize function, it will get the data, and then it will set the stat, the minimum, then the maximum. That one was done in the base item stat part. If you want to refresh your memory about this one, you can go back to look at that. All right, so now we'll do the affix group. So here, new script, and this time I'm gonna choose a template, no comment. The script will be affix group, and create that. And open. So we'll set class name, affix group, and extend resource. Then we'll have again ID, so var ID of type string. Then we'll have the type of the affix. So type, this one we can't set the type of an enum, but it's going to be the game enums dot will create the affix type. So let's go and create that. I'm going to copy this one. Let's go in game enums. I'm going to search for it, game enum. So let's add enum affix type, and this one will simply be prefix and suffix. So those are the type that we set in the data file. Now we can go back to the group, and after the type, we'll do the affixes. So var affixes, and this one will be a dictionary, so we can initialize it right away. And the last thing will be the apply to. This one is a array, and it's going to be an array of equipment type. So I can tell it here, equipment type, just so you can remember when you come back to look at the file. Helps to take some notes, initialize, and we'll pass in the data. A bit like the affix, we'll have the group ID and the data. It's pretty much like the other. We'll just pick the data and set the value. So ID is going to be equal to group ID. The type is going to be equal to GameEnum.affix type, and then we want the data.type. So that's going to give us the correct affix type. And the next step is to get all the apply to equipment type. So for item type in data apply to, we'll do kind of the same as the type. So apply to dot append GameEnum dot equipment type and the bracket with the item type. So the last one is the affixes. So for affix ID in data dot affixes. So yeah, this one is a dictionary. So we'll get simply the ID and we'll get the data from there. So affixes, then here we can set the ID. Affix ID is going to be equal to a new affix. So we'll create a new resource. Affix.new. Here we'll pass in the affix ID and with the data dot affixes, and we want this one, the current one, affix ID. So now that we have that, I'm going to create a function to get the random affix from that group, because if this group is picked for an item, and let's say the item is level 10, then we want to pick all the valid affixes and pick a random one in the valid one. So function get random affix will get the item level, and then we'll prepare an array of valid affixes for affix in affixes if the the item level that we're getting is greater or equal to the affixes a.min level. Since this is the ID of the affix, we can get it there. So if it is, then add it to the valid. Affixes append and affixes a. At the end, I can simply get all the valid one, so valid affixes, and shuffle them. They're going to be mixed, shuffled, and then I can return the valid affixes and the first one, 0.id. I just want to get the ID of the first. Save that. So now we can go in the item manager and load our affix group. So item manager GD, right? We'll add a new path. So this one will be the affixes path. It's going to be item data affixes. So in the ready function, we have the item here. I'm going to add also a new variable affix group, and then I can copy this. I can control D to duplicate. So it's not going to be the item path affix path read. Then here we're not going to set the affix group directly. Here we'll do var data is equal to parse JSON get as text, and after that can close the file. We have the data, and for ID in data, so that's each ID of the affix groups. ID is going to be equal to a new affix group, the one that we just made. New ID in data ID. There's probably better ways of importing data like that and doing the affix group and stuff like this. But in coding, if the solution is working well enough, I guess that's good. And also I'm always learning like you are. So if I ever find something better, I'll be sure to let you know in a future part. And if you think you can improve my code, please go ahead and tell me. So now we have our affix group. So now let's start working on the item itself. So if we look at that item, this one, so we have the component. For now, the components only have the base stat. So we'll create a new one. We'll have the item affix list for the rarity. And after that, we'll come back here to add the rarity and some other stuff here. So let's create in the folder item, create a new script, which is going to be affix item, and create affix item. So like the others, we're going to have a class name, affix item, which is going to extend the resource. And in here, we'll have 3 variables. So we'll have the affix group, we'll have the affix itself, and we'll have the scale, which is going to be a float affix and affix group. Now let's do the initialize function in it, and this one will only get data. This resource, this class name affix item, this will be one affix applied to the item. And what we'll do for the component is going to be a list of those, and then those will be applied to the item. So let's say we have the affix group damage and the affix is unblemished, and then we'll have the scale. The scale will be between 0 and 1, and with that we'll get the current value of the stat. So set those data, affix group is equal to item manager dot affix group, and we'll get the data dot affix group. Then we'll get the affix itself, which is going to be the affix group dot affixes, and we'll get the data dot affix. And the last thing is the scale. Scale will be equal to data.scale. Now that's it for the initialize function. Now this data, this is not coming from our file. This is gonna come from the generation of the rarity of the item, or later if we do the save game, if you want to save your items and load them later, that would be your save data. So you would load all the affixes that are applied on your saved item. And then we could do right away the set info. So the function to add the information of the affixes in the item info panel. So you can see those stats. So we can do it right now. So it's going to be pretty much like what we have for the base stat. So base stat here, we have the get lines, but I'm going to change this function. Instead of get lines, I'm going to call this set info, and I'm not going to need the lines, and I'm not going to return anything. So remove that. The set info will send the item info itself. So the small panel will be sent here. In this item info, I will create a new function, item info dot add splitter. So to split the different data, if we have the item type, we'll add a splitter, we'll add the base stat, this one. The other components on the item will be able to add their own info into the item info. And this could be improved even more. So the item info could have different part, and each component could modify it as they want to show their data. So here, those will stay there, but this lines, instead of adding to the array, we'll do the item info dot add line, and it will send the new item info line. Save that. I'm going to change how I set this text because I can improve this so you can modify more data in the display if you need to, if you want to improve this system. So I'm going to go in the stat data file, item data, right click, open in file manager, stats. And in here, everywhere I change this symbol to the actual value to display. Instead of using this symbol, I'm going to use the %s. Now that they all have the %s, in Godot, I'll be able to use the string format percentage trick to set the value pretty easily. If you ever improve this system and add more stuff, maybe it's +1 to a skill, then this could be also a %s. And in Godot, you could set both at the same time. But yeah, just for now, it's just going to change the value. And another thing, the bonus experience is a percentage by default. So we need to escape this by having 2 percentage signs. So save that. All right, so back in Godot, the stat info, I'm going to change it for display, and I'm simply going to add the dot display here, display, and remove all of that. So percentage sign and value. So it will replace the percentage sign s in the display string for the value here. And that's it. One more thing I'd like to change is the color. So when I create a item info line, I set its color here, but I'd like to have the other rarity. So I'm going to create the rarity enum in my game enum script. So if I go in my game enum, underneath my affix type, enum rarity. And in here, I'll have the basic rarity that we see in a lot of places. So normal, magic, and rare. And the last one will be unique. You could have common, uncommon. Yeah, you can create the rarity that you want. It's up to you. So then I'd like to create some colors for each of them. So now I'm going to go in the resource manager. Resource manager. I do have my colors already, but instead of using the string normal, I'm going to use the game enums.rarity. Let's save rarity.normal there. And I'm going to create the other. Let's do duplicate, Control D, then it's going to be magic or rare and unique. I'm going to import the color. I already did some tests to find some color that would match those rarity, and there. So it's a soft brown for the normal, blue, kind of yellowish for the rare, and unique is kind of a dark red. Yeah, so that should be good. Let's save that. Now, if we go back to the base stat, we can change this for normal. Game enums.rarity.normal. Okay, let's copy this function and bring it into the affix item and paste it here. There's a few differences. The first one is here we'll get the rarity because this set info will be called from the next resource that we'll create, the affix item list that will be on the item. This one will be called from there. So we'll send the rarity to know the color that we need to set the line. So rarity will go here. Then the stat range here, we need to get the stat range from the affix, affix.stat ranges, and that's it. Let's do the affix item list. So I'm gonna go in my item folder, right click, new script, affix item list, create that, and again, last name, we'll extend the resource. There's going to be two variables for the affixes, which is going to be an array of affix item. I'll note it here to remember, and we'll have the rarity. It's a game enum.rarity. So, like the others, we'll have a init initialize function, which will get some data, and the rarity item rarity. And let's set the rarity itself. Rarity is going to be equal to item rarity for each affix item data. In the data, we'll add the affixes that happened, and then here it's going to be the last resource we made, affix item dot new affix item data. So like I said in the affix item, this data will come from the generation or the loading of a save file or something like that. So then we'll do like the other one and we'll set the function set info. This one will only get the item info. Like the base stat, we'll add a splitter, item info dot add splitter, and for each affix, we'll set the stats. We'll call the set info for affix item in affixes, affix item set info, and we'll pass in the value item info and the rarity. So this will be the color of the lines. So if you have a magic item, the lines should be blue, the same as the rarity. Save that. So now that we have all of our resources, now we can start to add the generation code. So we'll be able to generate some rarity for our item. Let's go in item manager. There's not much in this file, but we'll add a lot. So let's make some place and let's start coding. Right now, what we do is we call get item with the ID and we simply generate the new item and return it. And in the item, so if I go in this script, the item itself sets the base stat scale here. I'm going to remove this from there. When you loot your item, you should set that value. I'm going to go in base stat and scale will be initialized at 0 and we're not going to get the value here for the scale and there. Initialize will only set the stat range. Save that. Let's go back in item manager and let's create the function to get a random item. And after that, we'll do the generate rarity. So function RNG generate rarity will have a item level and we want to return an item. A bit like we did with the affixes, we need to get the valid item. So the one that has the required level, var valid items key, call an empty array. Then for I in items, the first thing we need to do is if the current item I has the type data, if it has a equipment type and the item level that we're getting is greater or equal than this item, items I level. So that should be good because all the item that has a type are equipment. So it should be good. If you want, you can add more types, but you would have to check them. So let's say you want to add class for your equipment, maybe a weapon class or armor class, so cloth, leather, or big chest plate, then you could add different types here. That's pretty much it. So that's going to be a valid item. So valid item key happened. Hi. Then we'll create a new item randomly from there. Valid items key dot shuffle var item is equal to get item, and we'll give it the first one. Valid item key, the first one, 0. So that's going to call our get item. It will return an item. So here we can say that this will return an item. So we can return, but here we won't return the item directly. We'll return generate rarity by passing a item and a level there. And then we'll create that function. So I'll get all of that pasted there. Function pass. And something I kind of forgot, if you have random stuff in your games, rand I, so yeah, rand I or rand F, anything that using this, you should use randomize somewhere. So when you call those functions, they are really random, or else it can be, they will be the same every time you start your game. So let's say I want to show that. I'm going to fix the item info. So in the display function, since we changed the get lines to set info, we'll be able to change this. So any components we add and add the set info to it, then we'll be able to loop over all components easily and just set the line. So let's remove all of that. Let's do for each component, for component in components.values. So we'll get the component. We'll do c.setInfo and we'll send cell. Now we need to add two functions. We'll have the add line. So function add line. This one will simply do line container.add child. Oh yeah, and we'll get the line, of course, and we'll add this line. And we also have the add splitter. So function add splitter. This one will not get anything, but it will call the add line. Since the splitter is something we add often, I thought it could be good to simply have a function for it. Then this will call the resource manager.tscn.splitter.instance. All right. And also in here, I could add the rarity name to the type of the item. So what I could do to make it easy, I'm going to do var rarity name is equal to game enums.rarity.keys. That's going to be the name, the string name of the rarity. Then we'll get the slot.item.rarity. Oh yeah, but we still haven't put the rarity on the item, so I'll do that soon. Then we capitalize the rarity name, so it will put a capital letters at the start of the world and lowercase after. And here we'll do the rarity name plus a space plus. Save that. Let's go in the item. I'm gonna add the rarity. So at the top here, var rarity. And by default, it's going to be normal there. And you could set the rarity in the item file. So here you could have if data has rarity, and then we'll set the rarity here. Rarity is equal to game enums.rarity data.rarity. And I'm going to put all of those on their same line just to save place. And since they're all pretty much the same, so just to test, I could go in my item data, clear that, go in my data. Let's open the files, items, and let's say that the crystal will have a rarity of rare. There, save that. And then one last thing, this normal here, we need to change it. This is the color of the line with the rarity name and the type. So I could set this line the same color as the rarity itself. So I could copy this and put it there. Save that. So now in the item manager, what I was saying is if you generate random items without calling randomize, you will always get the same item. So let's take a look. So let's look in the random chest. So I get a wooden sword, chest plate, stone brick, chest plate, wooden sword. If I start the game again, and I go in the chest, I get the same loot. But now I have my normal weapon, normal armor, normal material. So that's pretty good. And those didn't change. So if I go back in my item manager, I'm going to go at the top. Before ready, I'm going to create a small function in it. And the only thing is going to be randomize, just like that. Then if I save that and I start the game, now if I go in the chest, it is randomized. And now I can see that the crystal is a rare material. And I have all the other stuff. So now let's do the random rarity. So generate rarity, the item and the level. So yeah, the item base stat scale that we removed earlier, we'll put it here. Item.components.basestat.scale is equal to rand f. Because if you don't do this on the base stat scale, they will always be at 0. So the minimum stat possible. You could put this elsewhere, like in the get item, or you could have a get equipment, something like that. Anywhere you generate some normal item with the base stat like that, then you could put it there. But I'll put it in the generate rarity because every time I'm going to generate a equipment item, I should be setting the rarity and the base stat at the same time, if that makes sense. So the first thing we're going to do here is get a random rarity. Get a random rarity. We'll have a number of affixes too. So variable number of affixes. Start with 0. We'll generate a random number to try to loot the rarity of the item. So what we'll get is a random float. It's going to be a value between 0 and 1. And what we'll do is if the RNG is greater or equal to 0.99 So that's a 1% chance to get this. Then this will be a unique item. So item.rarity is going to be equal to game enums.rarity.unique. Then we'll generate the unique stat. We'll do that later. And this function will take the item. And then we'll simply return the item itself. Else, if the random number is greater or equal to 0.9, which is equivalent to a 9% chance because it's between 99 and 90, you're left with 9% chance. And that's going to be the chance to get a rare item. So I can simply copy this line here, and this is rare. Now here we'll set the number of affixes. Number affixes is going to be equal to rand_i. So we want between 3 and 5 for the rare. So if I would do 5, it wouldn't work because it would give between 0 and 4. And if I would do 6, it would give between 0 to 5. But I want to have 3 absolutely. What I can do is I can say that at the end, I want to have 3 at least. And then inside, I'm going to do 3. So here, this is going to get me between 0 and 2. I will get 3 plus 0, 1, or 2. 3 to 5 at the end. That's what I want. And then here, later, we'll come back and we'll do a function for the name of the rare item. Set rare name. And this one will give the item. Then else, if the RNG is greater or equal to 0.6, this is 30% chance to get a magic item. So I'll paste this line again, magic. And for the affixes, I'm going to paste this here. This one, we absolutely want at least 1 affix, and we'll put 2. So we'll get 0 or 1. So at the end, we'll be left with 1 or 2, what we need here. And after all of that, else, it's a normal item, simply return item, because it's normal and it won't get any affix. Then we will get the affix, the random affix, and set them. So we'll have to get the random affix group to apply to the item. So let's do var random affix group. I'm going to create a function. They're going to be equal to get random affix group. And now we give it the number of affixes that we want to have and the item equipment type and the level. In this function, we'll get how many and the type. This is for the apply to, and the level is for the minimum level for the affixes. Let's create this function. Here I'm going to change item type and level. That can stay there. So function. And here we'll have to create another function. Var valid prefix is going to be equal to get valid affix group, and here we'll tell it that we want to have prefix game enums.affix type prefix. Then it's the same as here, item type and item level. So create that function, get that. So here I'll simply do affix type, and if you select your word and do shift F5, you'll put it in lowercase. If you do shift F4, you'll put it in capital letters, and shift F6 will capitalize it. So that's a pretty neat trick. All right, so here let's get all the valid prefix or affix depending on the type that we get. So var valid affixes is equal to an empty array for id in affix groups. If the affix group with this current ID type, so if the type of the affix group that we're looking at is the same as the one that we're looking for, and the level that we are passing in is equal or greater than this affix minimum level, affix group ID, affixes values. Here we'll get the first affix simply to see if the first affix minimum level is valid. This is only to pick the groups. So we're not gonna check every affix in the group. We only get the first one, because you could start a group of affixes with a high level, maybe an affix that gives plus to skills. You might need a higher level to get a affix that gives skills. and the type. So affix. So now we need to check for the apply to affix group ID. Apply to has item type. All right. So this is a long line. If you want to break your if that are too long, you can put parentheses and then break it. I like to break it from a end, so you know that it's the same if. Then we'll do valid affixes dot append, and we'll give it this group since it should be valid. Affix groups ID. So yeah, just to recap, the type needs to be the same, prefix or suffix. The item level needs to be over at least the first affix in the group, and the affix group needs to be applied to that type of item that we're passing it, and then we'll add it. And then we simply return all of those. Return valid affixes. And then we can go back to get random affix group. We'll duplicate this line, and then this will be suffix, valid suffix, here suffix, and that's it. We'll shuffle both of those arrays. Valid prefix dot shuffle, valid suffix dot shuffle. Then we'll need to get the amount of prefix or suffix that will apply to the items. Let's say that we got a rare item, so we got 3 affixes. So what we'll do is var prefix amount is going to be equal to the number of affixes divided by 2, but we want to floor the result, so we'll do .0 and floor that. We want to get the lowest value, and after that we'll transform that back to an integer. If we have 3, we'll divide it by 2, we'll get 1.5 and floor it, so we'll get 1. So prefix amount will be 1, then duplicate that. Suffix amount will be the same. So let's just copy this one, will be the same. So we'll get 1 prefix, 1 suffix, but then we have 1 left. And to set it, what we'll do is randomly pick one of the two. So if the number of affixes has a remainder, we divide it by 2, has a remainder of 1, then we'll flip a coin. So if rand I modulo 2 is equal to 1, we'll do prefix amount plus equal 1. We'll give it to the prefix, else we'll give it to the other one, suffix plus equal 1. So that's how we deal with the one remaining. Now we have our valid prefix and our valid suffixes. We need to return the right quantity, and instead of going in a loop and picking the number of affix and prefix that we need, we can simply resize. Valid prefix dot resize with the amount. So prefix amount and duplicate that valid suffix with the suffix amount. So we'll get 2 arrays with the correct size. So if we wanted 3, we'll take the whole valid list and resize it for 1, and we'll get only 1. And the other one could have been 2, so we'll get 2 in there. And then we need to return all of them. So what we'll do is simply merge both of the arrays. So var valid affixes is equal to an empty array, and let's add them. Valid affixes dot append array valid prefixes, and duplicate that, and valid suffixes, and then return valid affix. All right, now we have all of that. Let's go back to the generate. So we get our random affix groups. Then with all of that, I'll be able to prepare a array of data to create the item affix list. So item affix list. The data is an empty array. And for affix group in random affix group, I'll create a data dictionary is equal to a dictionary, right? And in there, I'll have the affix group, affix group.id. I'll have the affix itself, which I'm gonna get by calling the random function that we created earlier. So affix group.get random affix, and I'll give it the item level. The item level like that. And the last thing is the scale. The scale should be simple. Scale rand f. That's it. And then we'll add this to the item affix list data like this. So that should be good enough. And now at the end, we'll finally add the new component. So item.components affix list is equal to affix item list, this one, dot new item affix list data, and the rarity also. So item dot rarity. And the final line is return the item. Thank you. Save that. So if we want to try this, it should be working, but we don't have anything that can generate the rarity. So I'm going to modify the random chest to be able to generate the rarity. Random chest right there. Let's go into GD script. I'll simply change this to check if the item that we got is an equipment? If it is, then generate a rarity for it. So I'll get this out of there. Var item is equal to this. Get a random item. Then at the end, we'll add it item. But in the middle, it will do if the item.equipment, equipment type is not equal to gameenums.equipment type none. So that means it's an equipment. Then we'll do item manager dot generate rarity on this item with level, let's do 100. If the monster die and drop an item, you could pass in the level of the monster, or it could be the level of the area the monster is in. It could come from anywhere. Before testing this, I'm just gonna fix something in affix item. I forgot that here the splitter is not needed, so let's remove this line because this one is in the affix list. So we want to add all the affix lists without splitter. We might want a splitter before and after, but that's dealt with in the affix item list. We add a splitter at the beginning, and if we ever add something else after, the next component would add its own splitter. All right, let's test the game to see if the random chest works. So let's go to the chest, open it. We have a magic head, magic helmet, and t-shirt, shield, magic orb. Yeah, so we have some magic items. We have a magic orb, plus 11 to vitality, 17% bonus experience. So now that this is working, let's go in the item script and we'll add a new function to get name. So I'll go at the bottom function, get name. That makes some place. We want to get the name because it might have some prefix and suffix, but that's going to be only for the magic item. So what we'll do is if the components has the affix list and the rarity is equal to magic game enums rarity magic. Because if it's normal, we don't care. If it's rare, we'll do something else. We'll add some random names, and if it's unique, it will have its own name. It's fixed name. So here var prefix is nothing, var suffix is nothing, and then for affix item in component dot affix list dot affixes. So if the affix item dot affix group dot type is equal to prefix gameenum dot affix type dot prefix, then we'll set the prefix value. Prefix is equal to affix item dot affix dot affix name. You can duplicate this one, and then else down, it's going to be the suffix and it's going to be the same. And with that, we can return the name. Return, we'll do a string format. So %s space %s space %s. The first one is the prefix, the item name, and the suffix. And then we'll do the % again with an array. And inside here, we'll do prefix, item name, and suffix. But if the prefix is not set or the suffix is not set, there's going to be a space here. So we can set all of this inside a parenthesis, just like that, and do dot strip edges. It's going to remove empty space if there is. And the last line will be return item name. That means it's normal or rare or the other. Because if it's unique or rare, we'll change directly the item name. So now if we go in the item info at this line here, when we set the item name text, instead of doing item name, we'll do get name. Save that. So if we try this, we should see the magic item name. All right, so here we have a polished iron sword of know-how. But yeah, the text is too long for the header, like here, prevailing shield of the Templar. So I'm going to modify the title panel so it's scale. So in the item info scene, I'm going to change the title node. Instead of having the label in the title, 9patchrec, I'm going to revert that. I'm going to put the label over and the title inside. Then I'm going to get the label and change the layout for top wide and move it up. And then the title, I'm going to go in the visibility option, canvas item, visibility, and show behind parent. So then we'll see the title again, and then let's move it up a bit. Then I'm going to scale down a bit the title with Alt, maybe a little bit more. All right. Then I'm going to take the title panel and scale this one up. And then I can just do some little adjustments. And for the title, I'm going to select layout, anchor only, and I'm going to do full rect. And now if you select the label, you can change the growth direction. Let me close those. Growth direction. And the vertical, I'm going to select begin. So that means that if you type new text inside here, it will grow upwards. And the last thing is we need to check auto wrap. So we don't want the text to extend horizontally. We want it to break lines and go up. So let's test that. And let's see. We have something here. Resilient chestplate of courage. So that's pretty nice. Now let's work on the rare item name, because right now it doesn't have any. So for that, I'm going to create a new data file. I'm going to go in my item data folder, open in File Manager, create a new file. I'm going to call it rare names.json, and let's open that. It will only contain names for the different type of equipment and some affix and some suffixes. I'm going to import some data that I already have. So we're going to have two base node, the prefix and the suffix. And each of them will have all the different equipment type, chest, head, offhand, main hand. And each of them have some names to be chosen randomly when a rare item is rolled. Maybe you could pick one for each suffix that the item have or something like that. You can improve on this system if you want to. So let's save this and go in the item manager. So here at the top, we'll add another data file. So I'm going to duplicate this line, rare names, change the file, rare names. Then we'll need to load that into a variable var rare names. All right, like this. So then we'll be able to load them. I'm simply going to copy the item line, copy this, paste rare name. Here, file open, rare name path, and rare name. Save it. Now we have our name. So if we go down in the generate rarity, we can uncomment set rare names and create this function. Copy this. I'm going to go at the bottom function, set rare names, path. Let's make some place. I'm going to start by getting the type because I need the string type from the data we just set, equipment type, to go in the keys, and then we'll get the item.equipment type. All right, so then let's get the name for the prefix. So var name prefix type is equal to the rare names with the prefix type. Get all the prefixes for that type. Then we'll get one of those. Var name prefix is equal to name prefix type. And then we'll get rand I with modulo and the size of the array. So name prefix type, that's size. So this will give us one item randomly in this array. And if you add more or remove names, then you won't ever need to come here to change this because it will always get the same amount as the size that you have. So that's pretty cool. And then we'll do the same for the suffix. So I can simply duplicate those lines, Control D, and suffix. And let's change those one. Name suffix type, the same thing. Name suffix, we'll get a random one. And after that, we'll change the item name itself. Item name is now equal to name and prefix. Then we'll add a space and then the name suffix. Now, when we get a rare item, we should have a special name. Let's try that. So let's go in the chest and let's look. So we have the rare crystal and a lively t-shirt of proficiency. And yeah, here. Deadly heavy stuff. So that one is a rare item and it has a special name. I think the deadly is the prefix and heavy stuff is the suffix. So now let's go on the unique items. So to start with the unique items, I'm going to go in my data folder again, open a file manager, and now I'm going to go in my item file. And it's here that I'm going to set the unique data for each item. If I loot a chest plate, if it's unique, I want it to always have the same unique name and all the same unique stats, but they can also change. They can vary like this. Each stat will have a minimum and maximum. So for this test, I will simply add a new data here, unique, and this one will be a dictionary, and the data that you want for your unique items will be there. So name, I'll do the crystal orb of Gurmik. Then you set all the stats that you want it to have. So stats, this one will be an array of dictionary. Then all of those stats will be stat ranges like we have already. So intelligence, minimum. So this is a unique item. Maybe you can have a higher stat. And if you want to have fixed stat, you can set the minimum and maximum the same. So yeah, it will generate a scale, but it will always be between 20 and 20. So it will always be 20. You could always create a new type of data, which would be a stat without scale, would work also, because you could also improve a lot the system. This is pretty basic. You could have different type, and you could also have the damage on weapon to be a random range. So when you hit your enemy, it's not doing always the same damage. Could do it in different way. You could have damage minimum, damage maximum, or you could implement a new type of stat range, which would be a double range for the minimum and maximum. And then I'll add another stat, copy this small block. I'll have the regeneration, and let's go from 5 to 15. Another one, life point, and let's give it 30 to 60. All right, let's save that. So we can close this and go back to Godot. And back in Godot, I'm going to create a new resource file. So I'm going to go in my items, right click, new script, item unique stat, item unique stat. Yes, go in the file, class name, item unique stats. And as always, extend resource. The only value here will be the scales var stat scales. We're going to create another resource also. So this will be an array of those. So let's create the stat scale resource already. Click here, a new script, and it's going to be stat scale. This one, class name, stat scale, extend resource. Then this one will have the stat range and the scale, because each stat range for the unique has a scale. So this one, yeah, we apply the scale for each. That's why I have a stat scale resource for that. So stat range, which is of type stat range, and scale, which is of type float. Then we'll get the initialize function in it, and we'll get the data and the value, which will be the scale. So stat range is equal to stat range dot new with the data here, and the scale is equal to value. And now the other function that we need is the set info, so we can display the unique stats in the item info. So set info, the item info, and the color ID that will come from the parent item unique stats. So we could go and copy the few lines from the other one. So let's go in affix item and copy those lines. And let's go back in stat scale and paste those here. Okay, like that. And now I'll just change the rarity here for color ID. That should be good for that. Let's go back in the item unique stat, save. So now we'll be able to do the initialize function in it. And let's do the data and the scale. So for I in data, size, for each stat in the unique data, I'm going to add the stat scales dot happened new stat scale dot new. Here we'll pass the data at this index and the scale. And we only need the set info with the item info. And this one will add a splitter. So we split the unique data from the basic item data. So item info dot add splitter. And then for stat scale in stat scales, we'll do set info on those. So stat scale dot set info, the item info itself, with the color, which will be the unique color. So game enum dot rarity dot unique. Save this. So now if we go in the item manager, we'll be able to go back to the generate rarity. Now we have this block that does the unique item. But there's one thing here. If we roll the 1% chance to get the unique and we try to generate the unique, but the item doesn't have unique data, then it's not going to work. It's going to crash. So what we'll do is we'll go in item. Unless you set the unique data for all of your objects, your equipment, then it could work like this. But I'm going to go in my item. I'm going to go at the top and I'm going to add a var unique data is equal to null. And when I'll create a new item, I'm going to check in the data, duplicate. If the data has the unique tag, then I'll set my data. So I'll have unique data is equal to data.unique. So now I can save this, go back in my item manager. If you have the 1% chance and the item.unique data, you could do it the other way around. You could generate the rarity before and then pick an object based on that. So if you would loot something unique, you would always loot one item that has the unique data. That could be a different way to do it. So now let's start generating the unique item. So let's copy this and I'll go at the bottom and add the new function. Function generate unique item. We'll get the scales. Var scales is equal to a new array. Then for each stat in the item, that unique data dot stat, for each of those stats we'll generate a new scale. So scales dot happened rand f, and there, it's good. And the last thing is let's set the item name. So item dot item name is going to be equal to item dot unique data dot name, and that's pretty much it for the unique item. Then we only need to add the component. So item dot components, then we'll create the unique stat. This is only a name to find the component again. As long as you use the same everywhere, it should be good. You can put anything you want, and then item unique stat dot new, and we'll send in the item dot unique data and the scale. All right, save that. So let's see. I'm going to change the rarity. So let's put it to 0.1. So it will always be unique. But since there's no unique data on all the item, only the magic orb will be unique. So but here unique data must be stats, because it's the stat that we want to send in the unique stats. Yeah, okay. So now we can try. So now we're in game. Let's look in the chest. So yeah, crystal orb of Gurmik. The unique offhand, and yeah, there's the base stat and the unique stats. So 20 intelligence, this one will always be 20, and the other. So regenerates 6 life and plus 44 life points. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Works pretty well. You could add anything that you can think of. In my game, I have a small piece of lore on each of my unique items. At the bottom, I'm adding some text. Okay, so now I'll add a new type of chest just to test the generation. So what I'm going to do is find my other chest, the first one. Chest, it was the interactable chest. I'm going to right click and new inherited scene. So that's the one. And I'm going to import a new chest image, right? So I'm bringing, so I've got my new chest. It's the gold chest. I'm going to re-import preset 2D pixel, re-import. So it's bit sharper, and in the scene here I'll be able to change the sprite for this one, and then I'll click the chest, I'll remove the script and add another one, and this one will be the treasure chest, and create. So this one, the set item that is in the base chest will not be overwritten here, will just do nothing, because each time you open the chest will generate new items, so you can test faster. So the interact function, interact, and in there we'll do for each slot, for s in inventory that slot, what I'll do is s.put item, and in each of those slots I will put a new random item. So I'll call item manager.rng generate rarity, and here I'll only give the level, the item level. So I'll do 100. So this will put a new item in each of the inventory slots. This function will return the item that is already in, but I don't care, so I'll just discard it. And at the end, I'll send a signal to open the inventory. So signal manager.emit signal inventory opened, and then inventory. Let's save the chest. This will be the treasure chest. Save it in the interactable. Save. So if I look, I think the script for the treasure chest went into the resource. Let's bring it back into the interactable. All right, so this chest should work. Let's give it a name. Let's give it a size also. Let's put it to 10 item. Inventory name, treasure chest. The item array, we don't need it for this one, so we can just leave it empty. All right, save this. Let's go in the main. I'm gonna go in the dungeon, open the scene. I'm going to go at the end here. I'm gonna hide this treasure chest at the end of the dungeon. I'm gonna select the walls and my treasure chest and put it right there. Okay, and let's start. Let's see if this works. So let's walk all the way back to the end of the dungeon. Let's say that there's a bunch of monster, and there you go. Open this, and yeah, so I have a full treasure chest full of loot. Some of them will be magic. So I have a sharp t-shirt. So I have here a redundant buttress, a rare armor. Cool. So if I reopen, so if I press E again, I'm getting more stuff. Oh, and then now since I didn't change the loot chance for the unique, I will always get the unique crystal orb. So here I have an exuberant shield of proficiency. All right. An unblemished wooden sword of the giants. So that works pretty well. And every time you open the chest, you're going to get some random stuff. All right, so that's pretty much it for this part, for this tutorial. So yeah, I wanted to add the usable item in this part too, but it's getting a bit long, so I'm gonna do a separate part just for the usable item. And after that, I have still a few ideas about what to add to this system or improve it, and also with some comments that I had. Some people were interested in adding other system. So I was thinking about probably a shop system, a crafting system, the ability to save and load your data, having some loot table probably, instead of having those basic chests. Maybe the loot could be based on the area or the monster class or the monster type or something like that. A whole loot table system, not too complicated. Improve the hotbar too, but this one will be improved a bit with the usable item. It's pretty cool. And yeah, if you have any other suggestion, let me know. I'll do a poll to know what you guys are most interested in. So I'll leave the link in the description if you want to cast your vote. I'll be happy to see the results. So I'd like to thank all my patrons and a special thanks to Leslie. Thanks a lot. So I'll see you next time, I guess. And if you want to have the code for this project, you can get it on GitHub. The link will be in the description too.